folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris once again. Hey folks, welcome back to Chris Wyatt Africa. This is Chris in Central Pennsylvania. It's that time. It's election season. And not just in South Africa. I know my South African audience is focused on their election, but we have a general election for municipal elections right here in the States on the 2nd of November. I think it is Tuesday the 2nd. Yeah, Monday's the 1st. That's South Africa, and we're the next day. So we're in the midst of prepping for elections here, and lots going on. But today, my special featured guest is none other than the leader of the Cape Independence Party, Jack Miller, who's been a guest on the program previously. And we had him on talking about his party, talking about Cape secession last year. And so he's back now. We're going to talk about the election, how they're doing with candidates for ward councilor, their hopes for what will happen this election, and just how it's going on. Part of our continuing series on bringing political leaders and political parties and candidates on the program. And don't forget that on Saturday, we have a ward councilor candidate for the UIM. That'll be Mark Naidu running for mayor and ward councilor in Tshwane. And then we'll have other candidates on. We just had on the president of the Inkatha Freedom Party on Tuesday. If you didn't catch that, feel free to go back and watch that. And so with that, Jack, welcome to the program. How's it going, man? How you doing there in the Western Cape?
Chris, man, I'm doing great. It's fantastic to be back here with you.
Well, I'm excited. Oops, are you there? Can you say something?
Yeah.
Really? Okay, there you go. Sorry, I wasn't sure the audio was going. I didn't want to get into this, and then people, I can't hear Jack. Hey, fix that. Anyway, so, the software, it updates on you when you have a Windows program, and then it changes the settings to default, and suddenly things that worked 5 minutes ago aren't set up. So anyway, we're good. I just want to make sure. No, it's great to have you back, Jack. I didn't know much about you, and then we had you on last year, and it was a very interesting conversation. This election, I've been telling people that generally speaking, I just say this generally for opposition parties, that I was worried that opposition parties would, to use a phrase, screw the pooch and miss the opportunity here, which I think the Democratic Alliance is doing right now. With that, I'm talking about specifically is they're focused on what we can do. That's great. But, the ruling party is just giving you a gift. No open-toed shoes, no cooked chicken, no e-commerce, 600 days of lockdown, arresting people for nursing a child, for surfing, because we all know that the ocean is the primary vector source of the pandemic. And also, no open-toed shoes. I have it on good authority, Jack, that the reason the National Coronavirus Command Council and their Sangoma witch doctors, their scientists, came up with the no open-toed shoe is that the key vector for transmitting the Rona is the big toe. Yeah, so we I have it on good authority. That's what I found out. My dear friend Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma has told me that. She was busy zolling at the time, so when people put saliva on the zol. Anyway, so Jack, good to see you in a good mood there. How is your campaign going? And by the way, I would assume you're only running candidates in the Western Cape, or am I wrong? Are you running candidates elsewhere?
No, we're all through the Western Cape. In fact, we've never had more candidates in our history. It's remarkable. We're we are in every single district in the entire Western Cape. I think there's only 5 municipalities in which we don't have candidates. Otherwise, literally in every single municipality, every single district, we've got representation. So I think that's just a sign of how far the Cape Independence Party has come, how far the Cape Independence vision has come, and how much support there is now behind this idea. So we're really excited. And just to rewind a little bit in your fantastic tirade there, which I wholeheartedly support, you're talking about the DA making an open goal in taking shots at the government. And, I think one point that I'd like to raise that we often forget, certainly living here in the Cape, is that we keep on going on about how the ANC is the primary problem. And that's partially true. The ANC is the problem on a national level. But in fact, the biggest hurdle that we face in achieving self-determination isn't the ANC. It's right here in the Western Cape in the form of the DA. And for 2 decades now, we've had a DA that has been unaccountable to us, the electorate that have put them in power. And so if we want to see more accountable governance, and that's what matters for us here in the Cape, it's not the ANC that's our problem, it's the DA. And the critical thing that we need to do is get them underneath 50%. At 49.9%, they need to negotiate with someone to get the majority. And as soon as they're underneath that 50% number, we can then start to say, listen, we'll give you power, we'll give you the majority, but you promised us in 2019 that you would give us a provincial police force. You promised us in 2019 that you would give us a provincially controlled transport system. In the last 3 years, what have they done to deliver that? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So the key thing here is that we can't just have the DA come out every election time and say, okay, we're going to support federalist, decentralized policies like they did in 2019, and they've done nothing since 2019. Now we've seen them come out and say, well, we respect the democratic right for people to vote in a referendum on Cape independence. Are they just using those words to now try and get people who would otherwise vote DA to stay with the DA because they're trying to cushion themselves from the damage which we know they should be taking and we expect they will be taking because they are ANC light? And so this is really what I'd like to flesh out a bit more this evening as we get into our pathway forward for these elections.
Well, fair points there. I would have to say that a lot of people gloss over the DA's successes and failures when they talk them. They just throw them out. They've been successful, they've failed here, but they don't really get into it. And you've just given 2 key points from the 2019 election, which people seem to have forgotten: the promise to focus on a provincial police force and a provincial transport system. Instead, we still see people getting gunned down at the Joe Slovo taxi rank in broad daylight, waiting for taxis, and the horrific taxi violence that's playing out in there and Port Elizabeth and other places. Of course, that's at the Western Cape, but you get my point. We're not seeing any change in that. Now, there's a comment here very quickly that ties into kind of what we're talking about. It says the DA's prospects in the Cape are dire these elections, but they might grow elsewhere. That's from Marsalis. I don't know if that's the case. Jack, you're on the ground. I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm not tooling around Stellenbosch and Hermanus and Franschhoek and Paarl and Cape Town on a daily basis. So I'm only seeing it from afar. So I'm not convinced that's the case. Maybe you have a better view on it, but I am convinced the DA has a grand opportunity to gain a lot in KZN because of the nonsense that's happened there and the government's ridiculous or collusionary effort that resulted in 100,000 looters and 350 plus people dying and billions in damage. So I think they have a chance to gain elsewhere, and even in Gauteng, although Herman Mashaba's campaign is going to hurt them in Joburg. But what about the Western Cape? Do you see the DA's weak? Because their 2016 result was worse than their 2011 result. And they not exactly at 2/3. For a while there, they had 2/3. At the municipal level, do you see them weakening in places like Stellenbosch and in Cape Town itself and elsewhere?
Well, you said a lot there. I think an important thing to point out is that, listen, the DA has certain policies which are detrimental. I would rather see other parties like the ACDP or Freedom Front or other groups do better outside of the Western Cape. In the Western Cape, we're obviously urging everyone to vote Cape Independence Party because this is the only tool that we have to hold both the ANC as well as the DA to account. So we're pushing Cape Independence Party all the way here in the Western Cape. Outside of the Western Cape, like you mentioned, KZN, we'd like to see other parties besides the DA who are taking a good stand. The ACDP has come out tremendously in opposition to these mad lockdowns and the idea of the government having the authority to force you to take an injection. So, I mean, this just goes against human rights, freedom of choice, things like that. So these are decisions that people should make themselves, and educated, informed, personal decisions. So, and the DA has been abysmal in this. In fact, they were the ones pushing the lockdowns right from the beginning. They were the ones that came up with this 5-tiered level system, which we're now struggling to get out of. And it seems like it's going to go on for eternity. So I think there are other political parties out there that if you're not living in the Western Cape, that people should have a look at. Here in the Western Cape, how is the DA going to do? Well, when I spoke to my friends in the DA in the last elections in 2019, they told me they had a budget of 1.2 billion rand. Okay, now we at the Cape Independence Party, literally, we survive on donations of 50 rand, 100 rand, a few thousand rand here and there. and we're tremendously grateful for that. And anyone who believes in and supports Cape independence, we urge them to please help us out in these elections and moving forward. So, but the point is that, and you guys in America know this better than anyone else. I actually read this study in the States where in America, the Republican candidate versus the Democrat candidate, literally the party which spends the most money virtually per dollar results in the greatest electoral turnout. So it really comes down to dollar spend. And when the DA's got a budget of 1.2 billion rand, it's a difficult thing to overcome. But when I think the issues are as powerful and overwhelming as they are right now, I think we do see that's when you have revolutions. And I think I venture to say that we're in a state of such turmoil in this country that people can look past the posters, the flyers, the free T-shirts, the free food parcels, the endless promises, and hopefully go, you know what? This 1.2 billion budget that we've got the DA trying to sugarcoat us up with, we're not buying it anymore, and we're going to vote Cape Independence Party because we need to hold these people to account. So I think we are going to see us do incredibly well this election, and we're hoping that we see the DA tip under that 50% number. We know that they're going to be the biggest party. They've got the most money. They've got the most latent historical incumbent support, so that's very difficult to overcome. But if we can get them to 45, 46, 47%, that would be fantastic, because then we can negotiate with them and we can make them a better opposition to the ANC.
Well, Jack, 325 political parties registered for this election, 60 to 90,000, I mean, different reports, but over 60,000 people standing for the election for about 9,000 ward councilor positions around the country. How does a party stand out? I mean, in your case, because your party is the Cape Independence Movement, you've also got these private organizations that are also working towards a Cape secession, like the ULA, and you've got Cape Exit and others. So how does your party stand out in this election? Are you able to, or is it just a cacophony of parties? And is it a challenge? Because clearly SABC, News 24, Daily Maverick, well, less so Daily Maverick, they do a better job, but the Mail and Guardian, who seems completely absent in this election, I think they fell asleep. But these mainstream, lamestream, fake stream media outlets, as I like to call them, they seem very uninterested in talking to parties in general, unless it's the DA putting their foot in their mouth or the ANC crowing about the one municipality where they had 6 clean audits.
Well, I've got to say that we've had pretty good coverage. I've had nonstop interviews for the last few weeks, and I think it's because our time has come. I think this idea has reached a point where, 14 years ago, the climate was horrific. People thought we were nutcases. We could see the writing on the wall. We knew where this was going. We're now here. And in the last 2-3 years, as you mentioned, there's a number of other groups which have popped up, which have come in support of Cape independence. And we're absolutely ecstatic that there now are so many other groups joining us in this fight. And no, I think this is a great sign. This has been a fantastic campaign for us so far. We've been plugging away for the last few years. We've got more candidates than we've ever had before. And we've got a ground troop campaign that's more expansive and dedicated and efficient than we've ever had. So we're feeling very positive.
Well, because time was short, and you and I talked about before we went on air, I've got a lot going on right now, and I do want to get candidates on to talk to party leaders. Normally, I do a little more research before I ask questions. When I reached out to you, I think one of the questions says, "Hey, do you have anyone standing this election?" Because it's a municipal election. And then I was able to find the site that has the list of candidates, and you've got a lot of people standing for election. Any idea offhand how many people you're standing in this election? I couldn't count the lines because you go through the official list and everything looks the same as you go down, so I miscounted. So any idea roughly how many people you got running for office?
It's a huge number, and thank goodness I don't have to handle admin, or at least as much admin as I used to. But it's well over 100, just under 200. It's a huge number of candidates. So no, we're feeling very positive.
Well, let's get to this, Jack. Let's talk about what your party's running on, because We know what the ANC is running on. Before you answer the question, let me just remind people, we haven't always put the best people in place. We haven't always gotten it right. We haven't ever prosecuted corruption, despite promising to do it. And whenever something bad happens, we bring up gender-based violence, even though we don't give a flying flip about it. But we've heard you. After 27 years in power, we've had an epiphany. Of course, I'm channeling Cyril Ramaphosa at his ANC manifesto launch, in which 3,000 people were there when the limit was 500. But hey, I'm not going to criticize him for that. Anyway, so that's what Cyril Ramaphosa. So we know what the ANC is telling us all about. Tell us what your party is about for this election. Are you focused on service delivery? Are you focused on fixing something or bringing something new to the table?
Well, I think, as our name clearly states, the Cape Independence Party is here to deliver Cape independence. And just as the United Kingdom Independence Party was created to deliver Brexit, we at the Cape Independence Party are here to deliver Cape exit. And we have many other policies. We have a beautiful vision of what the country should look like. But that's obviously down the road. Where we are right now is playing the political game, putting pressure on the mainstream political parties and the status quo system to force them into a position to decentralize power, listen to voters, take taxpayers more seriously, and ultimately result in the self-determination of the Cape.
Well, let me ask you this, not to really put you on the spot, but do you have any specific focus? I would imagine there's a focus for your party. You're trying to do well in Cape Town, but what about the Cape Winelands, the West Coast, Overberg, the Garden Route, or the Central Coast, or any of those other municipalities, or those regions with municipalities inside them? Are any of those key focus areas for you that you're really hoping to make some gains?
Yeah, the West Coast has always been a strong territory for us. The Winelands is also great. I think those are the two territories outside of Cape Town that are looking very hot. Inside of Cape Town, look, 70% of the Cape population actually lives in Cape Town. So it's an incredibly hotly contested area. And the gains that we've made just in the city of Cape Town are also incredibly exciting. So I think we're looking good in the city of Cape Town and in the surrounding territories.
Well, that's interesting to hear. It's here's one thing and this hasn't been discussed by anybody that I'm aware of, and it's and I bring it up to you because let's be honest, your party's a small party. It's a small party at this point historically. Maybe you'll have big gains in this election, but with 325 parties and with a lot of people, I mean, all things being equal, there's no way the ANC stays over 50%, but who knows what happens. But I'm saying all things being equal in a universe that's normal, not some alternative universe where Superman is bisexual, apparently. But yeah, it's, but apparently in that universe, wait, that's this universe. Anyway, but apparently, so all things being equal, the ANC ought to get 30 or 35% of the vote, but I can't make that prediction. That's a bit crazy. But with so many parties, a lot of people, as you talked about, maybe in Inkatha Freedom Party maybe gaining some ground. My words, not yours, but the smaller parties out in KZN and maybe the UDM picking up a little action again in the Eastern Cape. With all these parties, there's going to be an awful lot of parties that have come on board that it seems like they're going to fall away. I don't have the impression that no matter how your party does in this election, you're going to go away. You're going to be there for the long haul. But do you think that some of these smaller parties might fold up their tents after this? I mean, some of these parties really, COPE is dwindled down to where it's, does anybody even know that COPE still exists? Are they standing candidates? I'm sure they are, but nobody knows about it. Do you think there'll be any consolidation or disappearance of smaller parties after these municipal elections?
Well, one of the blessings or curses of having been involved in politics as long as we have at the Cape Independence Party, it's been 14 years now, and we've now learned, we've become accustomed with the cycle. You see a lot of fly-by-nights appear every single election, and with great visions and hopes and dreams, generally based on unfortunately egoistic desires for power or money. And these parties, although their manifestos can put forward issues with good intention, it does sometimes undermine the bigger issues. And certainly we've tried to, and I think very successfully so, held to our guns for so long now that people tried to undermine us 14 years ago and go, oh, well, you guys are a bunch of nutcases. And we fought through it. We fought through the hostility, the mockery. It wasn't popular being in favor of Cape independence, never mind being in favor of it, fighting for it tooth and nail like we did in 2007, 2008, 2009. It was not a popular idea, but we've held to our guns, and I think that's been to our tremendous credit, and also to, I think, voters and people out there who've seen us through thick and thin, fighting through the storms. And now I have to say we've reached a point where the clouds have begun to part, the sun is beginning to shine on us, and Cape independence is a topic that's on the tip of everyone's tongues. And yeah, I don't want to preempt what these elections are going to bring, but I think it's about time that we got Cape independence into government. And I think this issue is going to be unavoidable from this election moving forward.
Now, if I read the list correctly, and I'm not an expert at reading these lists that the government put together, but I think that they list the proportional representation candidates too, because and you have people listed on that as well as specific people running for wards, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I did read it correctly. The scientist said something here in the chat. I don't know if it's a statement or a question, but I'll read it as a question. And I don't know that, and let me explain, and then you can go with it, Jack. So the scientist says, so basically they're ignoring the garden route. I don't know that the Cape Independence Party is ignoring it, and Jack can address that. But when you have limited resources, you have to focus on realistic places where you can gain. The question I asked of Jack is, where is your focus, where you think you can gain, and where your strength might be? And I think he answered that. So are you ignoring the garden route? I don't think you are. But
No. And I need to apologize because the garden route is tremendously strong. And for everyone in the garden route, please don't beat me. Garden route is very, very strong, actually, looking very good there. So I think that's actually what's so great about this campaign. Obviously, I live in Cape Town. And this is why we believe in decentralization, because, you know, the people of Garden Route understand the issues of Garden Route better than anyone else. The people of Langebaan and Saldanha Bay understand the issues of Langebaan and Saldanha Bay better than anyone else, because that's where they live. People like myself who live in Cape Town, you know, these are the things that we eat, breathe, and sleep. You know, we face these things on a daily basis. So politics is local. It needs to be local. You cannot have politicians dictating to us from afar. And so to respond to that statement, no, Garden Route is definitely one of our strongest territories as well. And yeah, that's what we need to see. We need to see local communities taking over control over their own affairs.
Well, and that is the key here. So one of the reasons in my analysis that I talked about since June of last year, cautioning people and warning them, is that why this is likely to be the most consequential election in South Africa's history since modern South Africa in 1994, is because politics is local. And if you want to gain a foothold, especially in South Africa, where government is involved in so many more services than they are in other places, you know, where they control now at the national level, the power, but local municipalities, water, and so many other things. Service delivery is such a key component of what local government does in South Africa. It also here. I mean, but it's much more pronounced in South Africa. In that environment, all politics is local. That's the bottom line. If you want a national foothold, you have to establish credibility at the local level. And that's why the election is so important. I've told people that you must unseat the ANC in every municipality possible, dwindle them out of a majority, and hopefully not even the plurality. Give someone else a majority, or at least a plurality if you have to go into coalition, so the ANC is kept in the cold, so that other parties can show they're transparent, they're not corrupt, they'll punish people that discover they're corrupt, and they can do service delivery between now and 2024, 19. You got to do it between now, but that gives you a couple years to prove that someone other, because over half of South Africa's population was born after the end of apartheid. These people didn't grow up with apartheid. All the apartheid they know is the ANC's racial bifurcation, but they don't know true apartheid, and they don't know what things are like. So all they know in many parts of South Africa is ANC rule. Their entire life has been ANC rule. So giving voters a chance, especially younger voters, a chance to see other parties actually perform. Now, the exception, of course, is the Western Cape. And there we've talked about some of the challenges of the DA. But that's kind of been my position. Would you agree with that that's why this is a consequential election?
Yeah. But again, I would say that it's not the ANC that we need to unseat. There's no ANC to unseat in the Western Cape, really. The party we need to unseat is the DA, and the DA pushes forward. They are hell-bent on winning a national election. And we know this because they've said it to us. We've had private meetings with them. They've said this in public. We've hammered them on the Division of Revenue Act, which is outrageous. It is absolutely outrageous how the DA can govern a province for as long as they have, the province that is producing 200, in fact, it's more than this, but we keep the numbers rounded because it's simple to understand the broader picture here. 200 billion rand we generate in revenue every single year. We give this to the ANC-controlled National Treasury. They give us back. Therefore, the DA who controls the Western Cape is getting this back, a mere 50 billion rand in our local and our provincial allocation. So we say this is insane. It's absolutely insane. You had the Catalonians, Barcelona, wanting independence from Madrid and Spain, and they were losing, I think it was around 7%. 7%, they're losing it, and they've got a tremendously strong independence movement. We're losing direct access to 75%. It's mind-boggling. So when we put this forward to the DA, they honestly, I don't know how else one could put this, but it's short-sighted or just a tremendous arrogant belief that they are going to beat the ANC on a national election and take over the central levers of power. So you've got a government that out of one side of their mouth says they believe in federalism, decentralization, and in recent years, like we spoke about 2019 election, creating federal types of systems where we control our own police, our own transport, and now this election saying that they support our right to a referendum on Cape independence. So these are the nice words, but what are they actually doing? This is where the rubber hits the road, and this is what people need to hold the DA to account on. Those are nice words, but what are they actually doing? They've done nothing since 2019 on those two promises. Let's see if they hold to their word and give us a referendum on Cape independence. In fact, we believe the only way we can force them to it is if they're underneath 50, which they're desperate to try and stay above so they can remain unaccountable. So this is what we need to address, and the DA is the stumbling block to decentralizing power down to local communities. And as you said, all politics is local, and in an independent Cape, this is the type of system we would want to see. Cape Town or wherever the politicians in Cape Town should not be determining the policies of people living in Swellendam or in Saldanha Bay or wherever it might be. The people living in those communities should be deciding the language that their kids should be being taught in schools, the amount of taxes that they are paying, what those taxes should be spent on. These are the issues that communities themselves should decide. So we see the DA as, in fact, a stumbling block where when it comes to elections, they make noises like they believe in these things. But when it comes to practice, we actually haven't seen them push any real issues that increase decentralization, federalism. And this is why we want to get them under 50. And this is why we want to hold them to account as well. So they're making nice sounds, but let's push them to the point where we start to challenge them and voters say, listen, if you don't follow through on a provincial police force, a provincial transport system, referendums on various issues, then we aren't going to vote for you anymore. Otherwise, they're just going to continue as they have.
Well, that's a fair point. The DA, if I recall correctly, was somewhere around 57% of the vote in the Western Cape municipalities in the aggregate, or maybe I'm just thinking Cape Town last time. So if those numbers are true, and that can't be far off the mark because they dropped from around two thirds, they dropped about 10 points almost last time. If that holds true this time, it seems like a very real possibility that the DA could drop below 50% in Cape Town at least. You think that's a realistic expectation?
Well, let's hope so. Let's look at the numbers. So in 2016, the last local elections in the city of Cape Town, the DA got 66.6%.
Oh, they did get 66%. Okay, I got wrong figures there then. Okay.
No. That was 2016. No, you're not wrong. You're not entirely wrong. I think you might have been looking at the 2019 numbers where
2019 they dropped. Yeah,
2019. Right. I'll just finish 2016, then I'll move to 2019. So 2016 they got 66.6%, and they used the campaign saying it's too close to call. Vote DA, otherwise the ANC is going to get in. Well, let's have a look at what the ANC got in 2016. The ANC got 24% in 2016. People are saying the ANC is going to do worse in this local election than they did in the 2016 local election. So they got 24% in 2016, and people are predicting that that's going to go down. Okay. Then they go, oh, no. Well, okay, but the EFF is a threat. Okay. Well, let's look at what the EFF got in 2016. The EFF got 3%. So combined, the ANC and EFF together in 2016 got 27%. The DA had 66.6%. Okay, it's when, and we know it's coming because it comes every single election. The DA is going to send out the SMSs and probably put up posters saying it's neck and neck. It's too close to call. If you don't vote DA, the ANC is going to get it. This is a blatant lie. The ANC and the EFF do not have the latent support of people here in the Cape. And that's because 70% of the Cape population is discriminated against by ANC and EFF policies. So Black Economic Empowerment, Employment Equity Act, all of these racially discriminative policies discriminate against approximately 70% of the Cape population. So this 70% is not going to wake up one morning and go, oh, I'm going to not vote for the DA. I'm going to vote ANC or EFF. Absolutely not. If people move away from the DA, they're going to move to the Cape Independence Party or the ACDP or the Freedom Front, any one of these other parties which are also opposed to the ANC and EFF. So people can sleep easy knowing that if they take their vote away from the DA, it's not going to result in the ANC or EFF getting in. So yeah, you spoke about the 2019 elections. We're very happy to see the DA drop there. This is obviously provincial, so it's slightly different electoral numbers, but the DA got 55% there. The EFF got 4%. The ANC got 28%. So there again, you had the ANC and EFF together getting a total of 32%. So there we have almost 70% of people are voting against these African nationalist parties. So we want to see the DA drop underneath that 50% number. We're hoping that we can achieve. We hope that voters also realize that the ANC and EFF is not a threat here. And the key to getting a new political system, a new pathway forward, is by breaking the DA stranglehold.
Gotcha. I just did a little housekeeping here very quickly. Elizabeth just signed up as a member, a recruit team member for Chris Wyatt Africa, and I owe anyone who signs up as a member during my live streams a salute, a sign of respect from a colonel. So this is for her. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for becoming a supporting member of independent journalism. I appreciate it. You're watching Chris Wyatt Africa on the Indaba Africa channel here, part of the Indaba Broadcasting Network. This is a special feature live stream with the leader of the Cape Independence Party, Jack Miller, who's been on the program before. But we're talking about the prospects for the upcoming election here on the 13th of October, just 17 or so days away from South Africa's nationwide municipal elections. Jack, fair point about your focus, but my point earlier about getting rid of the ANC is a nationwide thing. Your focus is the Cape. That's where your party is focused on in secession or independence for the Cape. But my point is that across the nation, South Africans need to wake up. All South Africans, whether the Cape goes independent or not, people in Mpumalanga, people in Northwest, people in KZN, they need to wake up to the cancer that is the African National Congress. This organization, which in every respect has betrayed the liberation movement, regardless of whether you believe in the liberation movement or you're opposed to it, whatever your views, they have betrayed it. They have become a RICO operation, a criminal enterprise that is intent on stealing and pilfering. And now we have an ANC Minister of Agriculture on trial for murder at an ANC party meeting. He murdered someone, accused of it anyway, and 2 charges of murder and 1 of negligent homicide, something like that. Every day, if it's not Zweli Mkhizi's Digital Vibes, it's Zandile Gumeda stealing in Durban. The list just goes, Ace Magashule. I can't even keep up with it. You need to have a deck of cards just to keep up with all these cases. So my point is it's nationwide, and that's kind of, I'm talking all South Africans, but it's fair. You're focused on the Cape, and it sounds like you have a good feeling about this election, like you feel your party's going in the right direction and you have some traction here.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me speak to that point then. Yeah, I really do hope that the IFP does well in KZN, and a point that I've often raised through the years is that and mainstream journalists need to really open their eyes and ears to this one, is that the Cape Independence Party is by no means the only movement calling for independence for a territory in South Africa. In fact, it's hard to find a single territory in South Africa that doesn't have some form of desire for greater autonomy or concern about the territory that was cut up by the colonial powers in 1910. And if we mentioned KZN, we've got good relationships with the Shaka Zulu Nation there, which they want to make KZN an independent country. The Abutembu tribe in the Eastern Cape, they want to make the Eastern Cape an independent country. There are Sutus in Lesotho who feel that when the British Empire delineated what Lesotho should be, that they actually lost a tremendous amount of territory, which they want to regain. Similarly, so there are Tswanas living in north of South Africa who have got family living in Botswana, who've got higher standards of living than the Tswanas living in South Africa. I mean, that just shows, so Botswana is doing a far better job, the government of Botswana, of the economic state of affairs in that country is better than under the ANC here in South Africa. So you've got Tswanas who would rather be part of Botswana than South Africa. So there's actually a lot of movements. And not just in South Africa. I was contacted by a group in Zimbabwe just last week. And they too have deep concerns about how Zimbabwe was cut up by colonialism. So this is an issue that goes back a long time, and I think we need to take hands with our brothers in the EFF and the ANC and the Pan African Congress and the ZAPO, and let's take hands. And let's put an end to colonialism once and for all. I'm with them. Let's do this. Let's get rid of colonialism, because this entire construct called South Africa is a colonial construct. So let's put an end to colonialism. And so a lot of people, aren't aware of this, but South Africa did not exist prior to 1910. We've got hundreds and hundreds of years of history prior to 1910, before the Boer Wars, when you had multiple independent states. And it was only after the British Empire, over their desires to control the diamonds in Kimberley and the gold in the Transvaal territories, committed genocide against Boer women and children, and put together those concentration camps, and invariably resulted in breaking the resistance. Not necessarily winning the war in a fair way, but breaking the resistance of to the British Empire, and that imposed the Union of South Africa in 1910. And it wasn't a racially all of the different races and cultures and tribes of Southern Africa, which they called the Union of South Africa, had no say in this matter. So we need to break this colonial construct. And that would be returning power down to those local communities, which for so many years, so many centuries, govern themselves freely according to their own values.
Just a couple things here. Roy said, don't you run the risk of watering down the vote. Not if the ANC and the EFF, which are the main threats that people talk about, can't get more than a third of the vote. Then any party that's over 40% could easily ally with smaller parties and form a coalition. And the smaller parties, as Jack is getting at, can hold the DA feet to the fire. I'm not advocating that. I'm just talking the math here. Now, there was a comment here that Corona's boring, doodly alien thing says there should be a law preventing public servants from looting a figure higher than Zuma can count. Well, I wholeheartedly agree. I think that one's bazillion, 100 million, trillion. I think we should be limiting people on that. Now, there was a comment earlier from somebody that asked the question, well, how is the Cape going to be able to survive? I turn your attention to the Baltic states, which were released from Soviet occupation and tyranny, in the early 1990s, no currency, no national budget, no military, no local police force, yet they're all functioning countries that have survived with virtually no assistance, mind you, from the outside world. There were no IMF loans pouring into the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. There was no Western support. That came later when they wanted to expand NATO. But Estonia came up with the kroon, which they pegged to the Deutschmark, which was a brilliant move on their part. It was the most stable currency in Europe, and their economy grew because of their free market capitalist approaches, and they developed a resource. The Cape is far better endowed than Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, or Slovakia was when the Velvet Divorce took place in 1989 between Czech and Slovak republics. So to answer that question, Jack, if you want to add that, you can, but the Cape is well endowed with resources. It has some light industry. It has incredible agriculture. It has great university system. It could defend its borders very quickly simply by finding people that have served previously and forming an ad hoc military and so on.
Yeah, I'd like to just add one country to that fantastic list, and that's Singapore. It's one we've referred to often because there's a lot of parallels. They also suffered under British colonialism. So here's a muddied island in the 1960s. They had nothing. They're a muddied island. People look at photos of Singapore in the 1960s. It was literally just shacks in no natural resources. And Lee Kuan Yew took this country from that to what it is today, and in fact, he did it in just a few years to what we see today in one of the highest standards of living in the world, lowest unemployment, a tremendous country, and this is it. We don't need the gold of the Transvaal territories. In fact, you look at countries that work well. The one common thread that well-run or good countries have is that it's good economic and political policies, and generally that comes down to decentralization, or it comes down to good free market policies where you allow citizens to start businesses, you have very low import and export tariffs. You get the state out of people's lives and stop burdening them with endless legislation that prevents them from being productive, from hiring people, from growing the economy. The state wants to control everything these days. They want to control our schools. You've got to decentralize that as well. We get dictated to. This is one of the problems we have from an economic point of view, is that kids are coming out in matric barely literate, okay? And that's because the government is shoving down their throats a state-dictated education. And kids aren't even learning in their mother tongue. So these are the types of things we would put an end to in an independent Cape. And kids need to come out of schools armed with the skills that they can enter the workforce. We want to see an apprenticeship system reintroduced where kids actually learn real life skills. So when they turn 18 and they matriculate, they can go and be whatever it is they've studied and apprenticeship under someone who's got those talents and skills and have worked in that specific industry for many years.
Well, just a few months ago, famously, Cyril Ramaphosa was quoted as highlighting a day in South Africa's history, referring to Bantu education was worse than no education at all. I agree, and I think the ANC's Bantu education is worse than no education at all, with 30% passing marks to enter university. It's ridiculous. But there's a question here, Jack, from someone a little bit ago, and I'm not sure what he's talking about. You would know, I guess. On your party's website, apparently you have some events scheduled for the 16th and 23rd of October. Are these rallies or something going on? Can you tell us a little bit about those events? Yeah,
absolutely. We've had campaign drives pretty much this whole year. So those will be the last two for the year. And we absolutely urge anyone who wants to get involved and join us. I think it's Table View this coming weekend. So yeah, it's the final 2.5 weeks to go before the elections. We are going to be in overdrive. So yeah, the more people that want to join us, the better.
Well, I think you kind of just touched on it. Kevin Morse asked a question. Kevin, depending on who I have the guest on, I'm not picking on Kevin, but I have guest on and I tease questions out of him. He goes, well, I'll consider voting for that party. So Kevin's still making up his mind. But Kevin asked a very question. He says, and I think you've just sort of alluded to it, talking about education and some of the other things. He says, what is the Cape Independence Party offering other than exit from South Africa? He said, I signed up for exit, but I don't see it has people around the Cape. I think he means you don't have people in place. But then again, I suspect that's what the 2021 municipal elections are all about, getting your people in ward councillor positions so you have influence and have an ability to direct the state to improve service delivery and policies for the citizens of the Western Cape. Did I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the key here is to understand that decentralized systems work better. So we need to break a reliance on the state. And this is what my previous sort of answer sort of alluded to, in that when your councillor and your mayor and your administrative body who you elected is someone that lives in your community, that speaks your language, that draws taxes from a transparent account, which everyone in that community can see. There's auditing that's available to the taxpayers who put that money in. The shorter the distance between taxpayer and voter and the administrative body that implements those taxes and policies, the less corruption and the more accountability that you have. The greater the distances, like we have here in South Africa, where our taxes go to some treasury in Pretoria or Tshwane, and a group of gray suits behind closed doors determines how that money's spent, and you've got to literally, it's a nightmare to find out where these taxes are going. And so when you decentralize things, you automatically change the system and the system itself. And this is something we've said, that we're not just against the ANC government, we're against the apartheid system, we're against the British Empire that got us into this mess in the first place. So it's this centralized system which results in corruption. It results in this tremendous loss of resources. And so Cape Exit, Cape Independence, all of these things that we are promoting and pushing for, it's not a single issue. It's not just Cape Independence. Once we get to Cape Independence, we need to put in place a political system which allows communities and opens the doorway for communities to govern themselves the way they see best fit. And there will be teachers and policemen and active community members that will understand the issues of those communities better than any politician living 1,000 kilometers away. So the key is to put in policies that empower local police forces, neighborhood watches, community schools. This is what we need to empower, not the inverse of centralizing things. And we invariably know that those taxes get spent and you don't get a proper education and you don't get a proper police service that doesn't look after your communities. I mean, we saw what happened in KwaZulu-Natal. This is what happens when you have a centralized state. The government cannot even protect citizens from absolute riots spilling out into the streets, people getting shot right there out on the roads. And what fixed it? Was it the police? No, the police didn't stop that. It was well-armed citizens who banded together, who put an end to those riots in KwaZulu-Natal. And that's what we promote. We promote community governance and community involvement in their own political affairs.
Well-armed residents stopping chaos from coming to their neighborhoods is an important topic, particularly for the July insurrection or looting, whatever you want to call it. But that raised a question someone asked earlier. I didn't bring it up then because I don't think it's a fair question. But if you want to comment it, you're welcome to, because it's not a local competency. Local jurisdictions aren't making South Africans able to carry firearms or not carry firearms. It's a national competency. But the question was, what's your party's position on firearms? You're not at an international level, but I imagine if the Cape is independent, where would you sit on what we call the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms?
Well, our answer to this is common sense. It's absolute common sense. If you look at the crime statistics in this country and you combine that with statements from the chief of police over the last decade, the police themselves openly admit that they are incapable of dealing with the crime threat in this country. So therefore, you have an elderly woman, a grandmother in her 70s, alone at home, and you're telling her that she has no right to defend herself from potentially 5 armed men breaking into her house. The only way that the innocent and the vulnerable can protect themselves is through firearm ownership. Responsible firearm ownership, and that's something that we certainly, it's a moral imperative to support such things.
Now, I saw that Ozzy was answering someone else. He says that's where the dominoes begin to fall. KZN will split if the Cape exit happens. Yeah, if Cape Cape secession does happen, yeah, my prediction is the next to go is KZN, and would definitely try to leave if such a thing would happen, for a lot of reasons. The Zulu Nation wanting their own autonomy, and a very powerful, the most widely spoken language in the country, although a lot of Zulus live in Gauteng. But yeah, no, I think that's absolutely the case. Now, I've noticed that you've got a few people on your party's website that's updated. I imagine these are senior leaders in the party, but is there anyone in the party you'd like to mention and stand out? Any particular exciting? I mean, the ANC's running around crowing about a 20-year-old that has no education. This is our young party, this young white candidate. I don't really care to hear about that, or about a 90-year-old. I care to hear about someone that's dynamic, that's a leader. Is there anyone you might want to highlight right now that just stands out that people should know about in a particular ward or standing somewhere, anywhere that you're running?
Well, I've got to be honest, and you know, it's where the Cape Independence Party is today. It literally it brings tears to my eyes. For people who just joined us more recently, who don't know what it was like when myself and Adrian and some of the other core members 10, 11, 12 years ago were out there fighting this. To see the amount of people that we have on board now, I could list a long number, a great number of people that are bringing such exciting energy and ideas and dedication and motivation to the party. And if I was to try and name people like I did earlier, and how well we're doing in the West Coast, as well as the Winelands, and completely overlooked a tremendous stronghold in the Garden Route. Similarly so with the amount of people that we've got on board now throughout the party. It's a force in itself, and that's something that really makes me so happy and so proud. It's something that you know, if I was to you know, fall off a cliff tomorrow, the party would be in a fantastic position, and it's an idea that can't be put back in the box. So and that's really what I was hoping for when we started this 14 years ago. That it should have a life of its own, and it does have a life of its own. So regardless of if I'm involved or not, the people that are now in this machinery, this tank of a vehicle that's being built, that's pushing Cape Independence, I can say the future is looking very bright. And a lot of young, fantastic young people that we got joining us now, real bright leaders for the future.
Excellent. Marlena van der Linde asked a question, which I'm going to address because we're going to run out of time here shortly, but you're welcome to jump in afterwards. You're like, she says, where will the new country's water and power come from, and where will the money come from? Sorry if this has been answered already. Well, we've talked about it a couple of times. I wouldn't lose a lot of sleep over it. First off, when it comes to power, Coburg is located in the Western Cape, despite its challenges. It's not the only power generating source there. Of course, much of South Africa's power comes from coal-fired power plants in Mpumalanga, but the Western Cape will be fine. The United States and Canada have a shared power grid. Southern Africa has a shared power grid. So Botswana and Namibia, Zimbabwe, Lesotho, Swaziland, even parts of Mozambique are all part of the Southern African power grid, and they share a power back. Most of it comes from Eskom, or from Cahora Bassa in Mozambique, but they do share power. So I wouldn't worry about that, and I also wouldn't worry about the cash. As we mentioned earlier, Jack said that the Cape is a net contributor. 75% of the revenue that's sent to the central government never comes back. They only send 25% of the money there. So under the existing tax structures, if such a thing were to continue until it were altered, you could see that money resting in the Western Cape, which would make the coffers flush, because currently the Western Cape is surviving without that 75%. Now, so I think that those are not really real concerns. I'm not advocating Cape independence. Honestly, my personal position is I'm not really in favor of it, just to share that with people. I'm not opposed to it either. I'm agnostic. But the point here is that those are not insurmountable issues. And as I've said before, the Western Cape is far better endowed than places like the Slovak Republic, the Baltic states, and others. And as you mentioned, Singapore, that came out of nowhere. Jack, I don't know if you want to address it real quick, or if you think I've hit that on the money or not.
Yeah, I think you've hit that on the money. Also, just to add that we've got more than enough dams in the Western Cape. In fact, you know, there have been projects to build more dams. That's something that we would support. We do have enough water, but it's always good to have a surplus. The same with the energy production. That's something that the Western Cape, you know, has been pushing to try and get more control of. We also need to break Eskom's stranglehold. We would certainly, obviously, an independent Cape would no longer be reliant on any centralized controlled energy producer. And you look at countries around the world where they allow private production of electricity and allow those companies to put electricity back into the grid, again, it's something that becomes decentralized. So the ANC government has been trying to stifle and prevent independent electricity producers from coming onto the scene because they want to control the revenue that they get through Eskom. So we would break that monopoly straight away. An independent Cape would have no monopolies. And so we'd see both power and water and the other issues you raised, that they would be non-events. And we have sufficient amount as things stand.
Bismarck Bear, who I haven't seen in a while, but was a very devoted viewer in the past. Good to see you again. He asked a good question, and I'm going to answer it. He says, who gets the Navy? If the Western Cape government secedes and is successful, they would be smart to send those white elephants to Richards Bay or Port Elizabeth and get rid of them. With the Type 209 diesel submarines, only one can get in the water. The cruisers they bought from the Germans, if they're lucky, they can cobble together a crew with their racial quotas to get it at sea for a couple of days a year. The Navy can go to Nelson Mandela Bay or Durban. Thoughts on that, Jake? Jack, not Jake. Jack, who gets the Navy?
Well, territory's territory. So whatever assets are in the territory, when the territory becomes independent, those would be our assets. So
you're welcome to the Navy, brother.
Well, if the submarines still drive, I've heard that they don't. I think the Navy there ran into the wall, so it's embarrassing. Yeah, we'd certainly get people that know how to drive submarines when we take over.
There you go. And sorry, I couldn't help myself. Vicky Tracy asked a question. Are you representing Stellenbosch? I seem to recall you have ward councillor candidates standing in Stellenbosch.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, throughout Stellenbosch, throughout the Winelands. Yeah.
All right, there you go. Well, Jack, both of us have got a pretty full schedule. I've got another stream coming shortly. I got to prep for a press conference with the All Blacks. I'm doing a press conference with the All Blacks, the hated, detested by me All Blacks, but I'm doing a press conference with them. So that's kind of a switch about. But that's because they're playing the Eagles here in D.C. on the 23rd. Is it 22nd or 23rd? Anyway, yeah, I think it's 23rd. Anyway, so Jack, let me give you a chance for last comments here. And before you do, you're welcome to come back on. Both of us have tight schedules between now and the election, but if you can get back on before the election, maybe close to the election, maybe that weekend before, if you want to get on and tell us what's going on. And then the other thing is make sure that you boot Big Daddy Liberty's video from promoted as a top video on your site and put mine there for this interview. Anyway, I'll give you the last word and then we'll close out. Anything you want to tell people about the elections or about the party or just anything in general, because this is a consequential election, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, let me just reiterate what we've said earlier. And we're at a turning point in this country. And those who have been supporting Cape independence for a while, I think deep down in their hearts, they know why. We know why we started this. It's because if this place that we call home, if you want to raise your children and have grandchildren to grow up in this beautiful place called the Cape of Good Hope, then we are reaching a turning point. And if we don't do something very serious very soon, which takes power back over the Cape, I fear we may reach a point at which it won't be possible. So we're hoping that the Cape Independence Party gets as much support as we possibly can. The Cape Independence idea expands and grows, and we finally put an end to this corruption and collapse that we've seen throughout the country over the last 30 years and turn a corner on this one.
Well, thank you very much, Jack. That's great. A couple comments let me get on before I let you go. And the first one was John Jarvis says, normal stuff, but what about a central bank, their own currency, trade agreements? Trade agreements are easy. You know, people are freaking out over Brexit. You just revert to the existing trade agreements which were enforced before they joined the European Union. For the case of the Cape, it's pretty easy to work out agreements with others. Beyond that, the currency, I already talked about. Estonia established a currency, the kroon, pegged it to the Deutschmark. The Western Cape could establish a currency and peg it to the dollar or the euro or, the Japanese yen or something like that, or just go on their own. It's not hard to do. Most countries don't print their own money anyway. It's printed in Germany or Switzerland by companies that print the currency there. Then it's shipped to the countries. People don't know that, but that's reality because that's the experts that make the currency. So that was there. And there was, Lars Salas said, there's poetic justice in expropriating the Navy without compensation. That's good. That's good. All right. With that, Jack Miller, leader of the Cape Independence Party. It's a pleasure to have you back on. Let's try to get you back on again before the election if you have time. And thank you so much. And good luck in your election. it's going to be interesting. I'll be watching, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you again.
All right, I'll get Jack into the waiting room there, and I'll close out this stream, folks. Cool beans. Anyway, folks, that was Jack Miller, the leader of the Cape Independence Party. The party's been around for 14 years, not going anywhere. They're standing a record number of candidates out throughout the Western Cape, 4 offices in Stellenbosch, in the Garden Route, in Cape Town, and all throughout the region. So we'll see how they do. A lot of people like what they're doing. A lot of people don't like what they're doing. Whatever the case is, ladies and gentlemen, you need to go out and vote. Those 26 million people are registered to vote. Show out in record numbers for a municipal election and send a clear message to the parties that are failing you, or the party that's failing, whichever the case may be. Thank you so much to my guest, Jack. I appreciate him being on. God bless. And thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to smash the like button. If you were new today and you've not been a subscriber to Chris Wyatt Africa, you should become a subscriber. I mean, think about it for a second, folks. I'm not South African. I don't have a dog in the fight here. And you're getting it straight right here on this channel. Doesn't cost you anything. All you do is push that subscription button, and be sure to push the button for notifications, get all notifications. And if one of my moderators quickly put in the Telegram Chris Wyatt Africa announcements group, you can make sure you get all notifications, because the PooTube does not inform most of my subscribers, even though they've selected that my streams are up. So please check that out, and you can find out what's going on the channel. All right, folks, thank you. I'll be on Ronaldo Khos program here at 8 p.m. South Africa, 2 Eastern Standard here shortly. And then I won't do Night Owls tonight because I have a press conference with the Eagles and All Blacks. And so I'm participating in that. So thank you all very much. God bless. Have a lovely day. I'll see some of you at Ronaldo's program at the top of the hour. And that's it. This was a special broadcast with Jack Miller, the leader of the Cape Independence Party. Once again, Jack, thanks for your appearance. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and your concerns. We appreciate it, and catch you all later on. Don't forget the like button, folks. Cheers.